You know, I'm glad we did the restaurant, and it was a dream that we both had, and it was amazing to do that, and we loved it while we did it, but the timing was just perfect. And I think our business now is more exciting and more what we should be doing at this point in our business. And we're still in hospitality, we're still feeding people, we're still cooking, we're still, you know, making people feel happy, but it's just a different way of life.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. What if everything you built wasn't the dream you'd imagined? That your dream evolved to be successful, but the cards didn't quite land how you'd expected. But then outside forces, like a pandemic, gave you a chance to let go of what you built, revitalise and re-emerge with a new offering that not only made you feel alive, but became successful and viable too. Willa Arantz is the co-owner of Racine in Orange, New South Wales. Willa, how are you going?
I'm really well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. You've had a pretty life-changing year, as many have in the industry, but just leading up to COVID, you guys were about as busy as any business could get. Can you take us back to that time and what it was like just before the lockdown happened and sort of changed everything for you?
Yeah, look, we had been, I guess the long part of it is that we'd had this little restaurant. It had grown and grown and grown. We opened a bakery. We put a wedding event business in there. And, you know, the more you make, the more you need to make, the more you need to be busy. And it's kind of like this, I guess, a cyclone or a snowball when you've got a business like that. You know, you're just so in it. And we were so busy, and we had all these staff, and you know, quite a few times we'd be doing a wedding and then the bakers would be coming in to bake the bread and the restaurant would be busy and full of people, and I just look around and go, my God, it's like an ant's nest in here. And it was quite amazing. It's a big building too, so we had this huge kitchen. I mean, you've been there, so you know, I don't know if you went in the kitchen, but it's, you know, it was that restaurant, it was probably about a third of the size of the kitchen that we ended up having. So it was huge. And my brother had his wedding. We normally only did 150, but being my brother, we ended up doing 170 for his wedding. You know, and they were meant to be having this beautiful al fresco outdoors wedding. It was in March, exactly a year ago. And they had a rehearsal lunch the day before. On that night of the rehearsal lunch, someone else was having their wedding in the building, in the function space. Then they had their wedding. It was freezing cold, it rained, so we moved it all indoors and we could just squeeze them in. Like, it was full on. And the bakery, you know, being March, Easter was sort of coming up, so we made hot cross buns and wedding cakes and desserts for weddings. And it was just insane. And I remember the wedding was unreal. We had the best time. And everyone was kind of touching each other with their elbows and stuff. And then we had you know, it was pretty crazy. It was sort of like, oh God, you know, are we going to be able to have this wedding? Should I call the people? Like, my sister-in-law's sister was from New York. You know, like, everyone had COVID there at that point. So, and I was like, should we call people and tell them they can't come? Like, my mum had pneumonia, which is a whole other thing related to some stents that she had put in. So she was always getting sick. So she was really vulnerable. And I was like, I was actually quite worried about all these people coming in from Sydney and all over the place, and New York and London, and I thought, you know, I'll just get through it. And then the next day we had the post-wedding brunch, which of course was the biggest post-wedding brunch we've ever done, because it was my brother. And everyone, like all our staff, wanted to make it the best experience possible. So it was crazy. And I remember being at that brunch and just going, I can't even enjoy being here because I'm so stressed about all our staff and how tired they must be, and you know, everything that's going on. I just had this I can't explain. It was a gut feeling like, this is too much. This is not sustainable. People are going to quit, or, you know, I don't know, go to Fair Work. I don't know. It just felt ridiculous. And we were all working hard. Like, it wasn't just the staff. Everyone was, like me and Shaun and everything. So, so that next week, everything started to lock down, and I had 2 girls on the events team with me, and 2 full-time girls. And we just had to ring all these brides and say, look, I'm really sorry, you know, your wedding it's going to have to be postponed, and that, you know, that was stressful enough, and so that will all happen. And then slowly the restaurant started to close down, you know, the restrictions started to come in more and more, you know, and then eventually, obviously a week or two later, it was no restaurant at all. At that point, we just went, you know what, we don't know when this is going to open again. Shaun had been saying, I'm giving it a year and then I've got to get out of the restaurant. My heart's not in it anymore. He was saying that already, so I'd kind of gone, okay, we'll give it a year. He was like, I'm too old to do this. We've got kids. It's just crazy. There wasn't, you know, restaurants, it's really hard to make any money in restaurants, which is why we did all the other stuff. And so I think we just went, let's just do it, you know, like we've only, but why not now? Like, let's just get out. But the contract was our lease was about to be renewed, so in June, so we just went, let's just get out. And we just took that sort of leap of faith because everything was crazy. The bakery was doing really well with COVID. Everyone was sort of, well, we know once they couldn't go out to dinner, everyone wanted to eat baked goods. It was Easter. We put all our energy in that, and kind of the rest is history, really. Like, I mean, there's more to it than that, but it was a real relief, I have to say. It's been stressful moving weddings because we had to move all the venues. We've had legal letters come at us. We've had all sorts of stuff, you know, dealing with brides who are misplaced or want refunds. It's been expensive. Like, it's been stressful, really stressful, but ultimately I know the way I feel now that it was definitely the right move. I've been able to, well, Shaun's back doing pastry, so he's rolling croissants at 3 a.m. every morning and loving it. He's happy, he's healthy. We're home to pick up the kids from school. I mean, I obviously still do weddings, so there is that, but I still love it, so that's fine. The bakery is a beautiful little business. We produce amazing quality produce. People love it. It's kind of becoming a bit of a place that you have to visit when you come to Orange. And the customers are happy, and I don't know, it's just, you know, I'm glad we did the restaurant, and it was a dream that we both had, and it was amazing to do that, and we loved it while we did it, but the timing was just perfect. And I think our business now is more exciting and more what we should be doing at this point in our business. And we're still in hospitality, we're still feeding people, we're still cooking, we're still, you know, making people feel happy, but it's just a different way of life. So yeah, it's in a nutshell.
Before we dig a bit deeper into what you guys are doing now and the life change that you've had, take us back to the early days and when you first started Racine and what you imagined it to be compared to this sort of beast that it became.
Look, when Shaun and I first met, we were both working at the Grand National Hotel. I was in the bar, he was in the kitchen, and we went on a date to the Olympic Hotel, and that was back when they had paper cloths on the table. And we sat there and we did this little oh, wouldn't it be great? Let's draw our dream restaurant. And we literally drew our dream restaurant, which we travelled and stuff, and then we went to London and did that obligatory sort of stint over there. Came back to Orange to a friend's vineyard who had the dream restaurant that we'd drawn on that bit of paper. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm not lying. That is exactly, like, if manifesting exists, that was it. So we had this little restaurant. It was just me and Shaun, and I think he had a kitchen hand, and I had his cousin Mark from Dani, who was an awesome waiter, and we ran the floor. And, like, really, we had no idea. Like, we would just drink all the profits at the end of, like all the wine at the end of the week. Like, we were just having a great time. It was really, really fun, and we were all working together, and that was kind of, great. That's our dream. But then we kind of realised, well, it needs to be more than this if we're going to make this sustainable. So we ended up moving to Locke Vineyard, where we opened Racine. And that was great. It did really well. I mean, you've been there. I think you gave us one of our hats at one point. So, it was a great little restaurant. We loved it. And when I was working on the floor, it was really fun. And then I had kids, which I still kind of worked on the floor a bit, like a lot of babies slept under the desk in the office. So, but really, obviously, it's not sustainable for me to be restaurant manager. So it did start to grow from there. And, Shaun is one of those people, he never rests. He's always wanting to do something else and do better and bigger. And, and I just probably naively kind of went, okay, whatever, let's do it. And it was fun. And I love hospitality. I love people. and I just love that part of the industry. So it was great for a long time. When our son Edward was 2, which is about 9 years ago, we opened the bakery because Shaun had this idea that he wanted to open a little hole in the wall that served amazing croissants. He spent the whole of my pregnancy testing croissants, which made me vomit every time I smelt one. So he'd really been looking at that and he was wanting to do it. So he did it, and and then that sort of grew from there. And we did that little. I just said to him, I don't want to actually know what you're doing. Just do it, and I'll deal with the bills and all the logistics later. You just do what you have to do, and that's kind of how we roll, Shaun and I. So. So we did start from a little tiny dream of just us in a restaurant, me and him against the world kind of thing, just doing beautiful food and looking after people. And essentially that's what we do now, It's sort of gone back to that a little bit.
Tell us a bit about running a restaurant in the country and what the lure for you was in the first place, and the challenges involved in having longevity like you guys have had.
Look, running a restaurant in the country is a beautiful, beautiful dream, and it is a lovely thing to do, but it's really, really hard, even in a place like Orange. It's probably different now that COVID's hit because people are coming to the country more and Orange is absolutely booming. But when you see us, people go, oh, we can never get in. It's like, well, that's because you only want to come on Saturday. It's really hard. It's lovely, and you get to. We live next door to farmers, and we got to meet all the producers, and the vignerons were in the restaurant all the time, and so you're really a part of it, which is wonderful. And you know your customers, you get so many regulars, but it's tough, because your regulars don't, they only come out on weekends. At that point, tourists were only coming here on weekends, and even as I said, even in a town like Orange, so. Getting staff was really hard. Again, I think that's probably changed since COVID, but it's tough. It's lovely, and you can obviously do a lot more with your restaurant in terms of, I guess, the space. Like I said, our kitchen was 3 times the size of the restaurant, so we were able to do a lot more. But it is tough, and it really takes a toll, I think, on you as people. Like, you're working hard and you're constantly having to be relevant and reinvigorate the business and think of new ideas to get people in, which we were good at, I think, and we did have a good business by the end, but it's exhausting, I will say.
Tell us a bit about Orange. It's a real destination and an absolutely stunning town in autumn when all the leaves are their different colours. It's known for some pretty amazing wines too. What's so great about Orange and the produce around it?
Look, Orange is such a beautiful town. It's been, developing itself as a food area for long before we even got here, which was 15 years ago. So I think Food Week is having its 30th anniversary this year. So it definitely is a really amazing place to be if you're in the food industry, and I think that is only even just starting to really hit its stride now. There's some great chefs here, there's some great restaurants, not as probably as much produce as you would think. I think when we got here there was probably more. There was rabbits and snails and all sorts of stuff, and venison, which is still here, but even so, we have beautiful orchards and all that sort of stuff as well. And obviously the wine is really taking off here. There's a lot of great cellar doors and some great wine. Like, you won't get a bad wine in Orange, I can tell you. It's really great. And it is a beautiful place to visit. So when people come here, you often hear them say, I can't believe how beautiful Orange is. And it really is, because it does have those 4 seasons. You get lovely mild summers, which are warm enough that you can kind of be in summer, and then right now it's starting to turn, so it's getting crisp evenings, and the leaves are starting to turn, and it'll be just glorious in about a month or 2. And then you get cold winters, it snows, and then spring is it's green and lush, and there's a lot of sort of English trees and English gardens and stuff. So that really, it's a beautiful place to live. It's affluent, so there's good schools, beautiful houses. It's just there's money in the town, which always makes a town great to be in because people can open cafes and things. So it's a beautiful place to live.
You mentioned that you and Shaun met at Grand National and the seeds were sown to eventually open Racine. But what led you to a career in hospitality?
Really by default. When I went to uni and studied journalism, funnily enough, and I got my first job at the AJC working in their functions department. And then I got pub work. I worked at a few places like the Lord Dudley in Paddington for a long time, where I met Alex Avramidis, who owned the Grand National, and I went there with him when he bought that. I just loved it. I liked the people. I love the buzz. I really like the adrenaline you get when you're busy and you're serving. And I get that adrenaline now from making lots of coffees, for people and getting that quickly and beautifully. Like, I love that. I've sort of lost the train of that question. Sorry. That's how I got into hospitality. So I've always been in hospitality. We met there. Shaun was, really sort of getting into his career, like, seriously at that point. And then I went and worked for Keystone Group, doing their marketing and PR for Cargo Bar for a few years, and then we went overseas, and I got out of hospitality a little bit there because I was driven by the dollar. I wanted to travel and I wanted to make a bit of money so we could have an interesting life over there. But Shaun stayed in hospitality as a chef and learnt heaps there. So, and then came back and just did a restaurant. I mean, it was just sort of a natural thing to do. I couldn't think of doing anything else, to be honest.
The vast majority of restaurants in Australia are family-run, small establishments, and not unlike what you guys do. What's been the challenges and the joys of working with a partner in a business like that?
Well, I guess we get on pretty well. We have mostly the same. Well, we basically want the same thing. We approach it from different aspects. I don't know. People who've worked with us will probably say we're pretty feisty. Like, we have some pretty cracking fights in the past that we've mellowed a lot. But we're quick and they're short and sharp. Our fights. They're like, and then we're done. But we really want the same thing. We both really love the industry, and we love food, and I love people. Shaun loves food, so it works well. We complement each other. I don't try and muscle in on his territory, and he doesn't try and muscle in on mine. But when we need each other, we can be quite good advice. So. It's not easy. I don't think a lot of people could work together, but we're pretty good friends, and we want the same thing. So we balance each other out nicely. You
guys made a name for yourselves with one of the best regional restaurants in the country, but also for the amazing events. And you talked about weddings and all those weddings that you've put on. What makes a great event, and what's some of the challenges from your perspective in creating those experiences?
Look, I think you've got to love people. You really do. You've got to make sure that everything you're doing have attention to detail. One of the things, I've got two sayings when it comes to giving good hospitality and events particularly, is good enough is not good enough, and everything needs to be abundant. So, it's got to look like you've got to have the widest tablecloths. You've got to have the biggest flower arrangements. You've got to have groaning food. Like, you've got to, everything you do has got to be exactly the same way. The tables have to look perfect. And I think it's that willingness to just be to understand that sometimes, on a bride's day, it's their biggest day of their life, So you've got to make sure that you are there and caring for them as much as possible, which has been one of the biggest challenges of COVID, because we've had to move venues. We've had to move a lot of dates. Some people have had 3 venues now and 3 different dates, and they're still with us. Wow. And still love us. And I think it's that care. You've got to be there for them, and it might seem trivial at the time, but you just have to make sure that you care about them and do take as much stress and workload off them as possible. And I think that's why we've had such a successful business. Obviously, the food and wine is a big part of what we do as well. We offer some of the best food in events, I think, that you will ever find, for big events, because we offer restaurant-style food. But I also think that care and the fact that we will go, you know, if you came to me, you don't have to lift a finger. We'll do all that for you. You just sit back and relax, you know, as much as you can. We'll do everything for you. And I think that's a really big part of it. We're in hospitality, and that's something I say to people. We're in hospitality. We have to be hospitable. That's really important when in any aspect of our industry, but particularly weddings and events, because, you know, it's they're paying a lot of money and it's their biggest day of their life. So, yeah, I guess that's
at the top of
successful. Yeah.
At the top of the show, you talked about how busy you guys were and how big your offering became and how many people are involved.
Yeah.
But it's all been stripped back now, and you're under one roof. But you have a couple of elements to what you're doing. Can you paint a picture of what Racine is like these days?
Sure. So we had a little bakery in town before in the wall. And then when the restaurant closed, there was a shop front that had been for lease. So we went to them and said, look, can we rent that? So we're renting that now. We've put a kitchen and office upstairs from that, which we do all our take-home food and basically all the prep for our weddings and events, which we do off-site at various venues, but most particularly at the moment at Printhy's Wines packing shed, which is beautiful. And then downstairs at the back, which is actually on Summers Street, which if anyone knows Orange, on the main street it fronts onto, we're developing that into a sit-down area for the bakery, which will hopefully be licensed as well, so you can still drink wine, but you can have a croissant and a champagne. So that's kind of where we're at now. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I love all that sort of stuff too. So we also rent a massive warehouse where we keep like so much kitchen equipment that isn't being used right now. With the idea that maybe we'll need it again, or maybe we'll sell it, I don't know. A huge baking oven that we've baked one load of bread in because, you know, it was brand new when we hit COVID, and we can't fit in the bakery now. So that's the plan, is that we will probably use that warehouse to be a production space so we can grow the production of the bakery, because it really is a great little business, and we're struggling to keep up with the demand, which is a good problem. And then so we do our weddings and events. We've started a little thing in COVID called Racine at Home, which is basically when you couldn't go to a restaurant, we'll bring the restaurant to you.
Wow. And
when it was really hard. Yeah, and people absolutely love it. So we bring a chef and our front of house manager, who's French, Bastien, or two chefs, and we set the restaurant in your house. The chefs will cook in front of you if you want to, if that's your kitchen, how your kitchen works, which most people's do. And then our waiters will serve you like a restaurant. We set up, we serve you, and then we pack up and go, and you would never know we're there. And people just love it. It's so much fun. It's really great for us. We get to this, and our waiters and our chefs are still challenged because they're still doing restaurant stuff. Shaun doesn't have to do that part of it anymore, which I think he's probably happy about. But it's great. We've got a really good little team of people who've been with us for a long time, and they are really having a lot of fun. So, and customers are loving it. We're flat out. We actually have to turn people away at the moment with inquiries because it's so popular. Yeah, it's great.
How are you feeling at the moment if you compare the way your life was a year ago and how busy you and Shaun were to now? How can you compare them?
Look, it's a 180. I mean, obviously having a business is stressful no matter what you do. You know, it's because you're responsible for people, and we still have a lot of staff, but we've probably got half the staff that we had back then. And I think I was running on 100% anxiety. I was always worried about everything. Having the pressure of, landlords and sharing a space, which we were out at Racine as well with a vineyard, and that was always in the back of my mind. This isn't going to work. It's even though we've been here for 15 years or whatever it was. There were new owners, and it was feeling sort of like, oh, this is not, And I knew that Shaun wasn't loving it, and so I felt like I was really driving it all the time. And it was just busy, even just not having to worry about spelling mistakes in menus anymore is an awesome thing. You know, little things like that you sort of don't think at the time are a big deal, but they really are. And, you know, keeping customers happy all the time, and, you know, being busy 1 or 2 days a week and then trying to drum up business for the rest of the week. Like with the bakery, I just go in there. Shaun's in there in the kitchen, so I know he and his guys in the kitchen are producing beautiful food. The weddings I run, like it's just as more sustainable. There's one of us managing each part of the business, which is really important. I think before COVID, I couldn't even get into the bakery. I was too busy. So having the time to do that for the business has been amazing. Plus, we don't open Sundays and the bakery closes at 5:30. So one of us is always home with the kids, which is lovely, and we're both home at night. You know, we've got a social life again. It's just a better way of life. I mean, I love restaurants, but, you know, it really was. And this is such a nicer pace of life, and a much more secure way to have a business, I guess, because it is constantly the same. It doesn't really change, you know, in terms of what's coming in. We can plan what's happening with the Racine at home and the wedding, so we know what's happening there, and it just feels much more in control, and everyone's kind of working to their capacity but not overworked, which is really lovely because, you know, ultimately you do have to care about your staff, and when you're feeling like you're taking the piss, which we didn't mean to be, but we just had great staff at the time who wanted to work, but I felt like, I know you're saying you want to do this, but this is terrible. I feel terrible that you're working this hard to achieve all of this stuff that we've created. So there's a huge level of guilt off my shoulders as well, that I know people are working hard but not ridiculous, which is nice, you know, as a boss as well.
There's been a lot of talk about the regions booming, and there's no word of when international travel might open up again. You mentioned Orange has been busy just recently. What's your thoughts for the next year or two for a region like Orange? Are you expecting a real golden time?
Yeah, look, yes, how absolute has been. I think COVID was, you know, everyone kind of thought, oh God, I've got to get out of the house. I've got to go. So as soon as they could, like everyone was here. Winter is our busy time though. So obviously winter was when everyone could travel. I think we'll have a really good year as well this year. And I think Orange itself is a pretty exciting place to be and to visit. And the more people that come, the more people that want to come, and, you know, and so on and so on. So I definitely think that we have got a really busy, exciting 2 years ahead of us, which is why I want to capitalise on it now by opening the cafe for winter. But in saying that, I think it won't be ridiculously more busy than we had in COVID. It was pretty crazy here. There were people everywhere. In fact, if you're going to get COVID, I'm surprised that we didn't get it in Orange, to be honest. There were people from Sydney everywhere, you know, obviously where everyone was doing what they could do in terms of social distancing, but you couldn't get accommodation, you couldn't get a booking at a cellar door, you know, you couldn't get a booking at a restaurant, hence Racine at home. It was just crazy, which was great because everyone felt that, you know, we'd had a couple of really terrible years. We'd had drought, we'd had bushfires, so a lot of people couldn't make wine for 2 years, and then the drought on top of that. Like, it had been pretty, not as bad as other places, but we'd had a couple of really tough years here. So it was nice. I think it was nice for everyone, especially the vignerons, to be able to have that really busy time. So yeah, I think it will continue though.
With these changes that you've made and a greater life-work balance, has it created the foundation for you to have a longer career in the industry and become a bit more creative and do some things that you thought you weren't able to? Yes,
absolutely. I think my perspective and Shaun's has matured in terms of what we want to get out of the business. Like, when I first started weddings, I was getting married, you know, so it was really exciting. I loved doing weddings, and it was fun, and I was into weddings, and Martha Stewart was my hero and all this stuff. But now I'm in 40th season, and, well, past that actually, but you know, we're at that point where I'm kind of like, oh God, if I see any more hessian and lace, I'm going to vomit, you know. So I'm kind of a bit beyond that, which I still love to do them, but I think I'm now from my point of view, I'm more able to, like, I'm wanting to do more kind of interesting events and different sort of stuff, and probably less weddings, more kind of parties, which, you know, in terms of Shaun, definitely, I think restaurants can be really soul destroying, and I think, you know, he did really, really well for a long time, and then we had some personal pretty happen to us personally. We lost a baby in 2013, so that was pretty hard, and it really took a toll on him, and I don't think he ever got his mojo back, and I think he knew that, and he'll kill me for saying this if you just listen, but you know, I think that was really, really hard. It was really hard in our business. The business recovered, but I don't think he ever got that, you know, young guy's drive to just have a really busy restaurant. And, you know, when you're in the country, you don't have a really busy restaurant for most of the time. So that he lost his mojo then. And I think the bakery, by being able to create beautiful pastries and tarts and, you know, just beautiful food again, and have people enjoy it and buy it, and he can be in there listening to them going, oh my God, these are the best croissants out of Paris, you know, since I've been to Paris, you know, that sort of thing. So that's given him a real sense of achievement and purpose again, and I can see that in him, and it's really, really great for us, and I think that's kind of where we're going, and I can see some longevity in that. I think the restaurant, I remember thinking, we were on holidays last year in January, and thinking, are we going to be doing this forever? Like, am I going to be 75 and still trying to make some money out of a restaurant? And I don't want to destroy people's dreams. It was great, and it gave us such a big stepping stone to where we are now. We wouldn't be there without that great restaurant, and we loved it for so long, but it was time for us. And I think where we're headed now is really exciting and does have some longevity. Like, I could still be quite happily the barista at the bakery when I'm 75, if they'll let me in. So I do feel like that. I love it. So yeah, it's great.
Well, Willa, it's great to hear what's emerged from COVID for you guys. You're a real shining light for regional New South Wales, and very much look forward to hearing what's to come from you and Shaun.
Yeah, well, it's exciting.
We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today. Please keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Huck. Thanks for talking to me as well.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.